was our last time on Pei Aleph Lach Aleph, we had talked about, Shulchan talked about using meraglayim, so a person eating meraglayim from a treif animal, and we had spoken about the special dinim of tzir and things that are yotze. So we're going to talk this time about homeopathic remedies. The connection is, just when you think of meraglayim and you think of using strange things as remedies, that's what we're going to find out all kinds of unusual things that they choose to use as remedies. And also, the derech klal, the homeopathic remedies that we're going to talk about are things that use yotzes. Okay, they're usually not using the thing itself. They're usually using the yotze. Okay, they're usually it's the yotze of the thing that they use. Okay, so
this doesn't discuss you're not talking about other homeopathic remedies like acupuncture and things like
no,
that.
so I was going to say that later, but yes, I'm going to say it now already. Right, I'm going to say is that we're talking specifically about homeopathic remedies. Not to say some of the things may apply to other alternative medicines, right? But the homeopathic is very specific, and the shilas that we're going to talk about, some of them are very, very specific homeopathic remedies. There are other alternative medicines. That's some other day. I don't know what simon that'll belong in, but that's some other simon. But for us, I don't know what it is. But for us, we're talking about homeopathic because of the possibility, and that is the following: when you make a homeopathic remedy, we're going to talk about exactly what they do with it. But they come from three groups of items. They come from plants, minerals, and animals. Okay, that's sort of just about everything else in the world does. Okay, they come from plants. Most of them are from plants and minerals. Okay? Most of them are from all kinds of unusual. We'll pass a bunch of them along the way. Unusual, all kinds of herbs and plants and minerals and things like that. And from those, from the active ingredient of those doesn't pose any problem. It comes from something that's kosher. Okay, but there's also a fair amount of their things. A fair amount of their things have come from animal based. Okay, and over here on the screen you'll see a couple of the ones that are popular, and the names that are under there that you see there are the names that they use in homeopathic world, like the bees.
Right, so these are not scientific names.
Sometimes they are the Latin names. Sometimes it's a corruption of the Latin name, and sometimes it's a completely made up name. Okay, Apis mellifera. I don't know if that is or is not the right word for bees. I don't know if that is or is not. A Scipia is really the name for a cuttlefish. A Cantharus, is that a beetle? It's or for Mycorrhiza, which is ants. So whether each one of these things is like the name of the bottom there for I can't even pronounce it. Asalacacina. It's really maladuck. That's what it is. No, it's an extract from a maladuck. That's what it is. So they don't call it maladuck. It doesn't say on the package maladuck. It says this made-up name, Asalacacina. I can't pronounce it. But whatever it is, so that thing is so these are the ones that you see here, popular ones, the popular ones, and then there's also they have. I hope I pronounced this word right. There's a pharmacopoeia. A pharmacopoeia means pharmacopoeia. There we go. That's probably the right way to say it. Okay, which is a listing of all medicines. Okay, so every body of science or medicine has their list of all the things that work and what they do and how to use them. So lo and behold, the homeopaths have one also. And the first American version was printed more than 100 years ago, in the 1870s. And if you skim through that, now I can't tell you that all the things that are in that pharmacopoeia are still being used. I can tell you that
pH?
What?
pH, pharmacy?
Yeah, like pH. Okay. No. So it has in it hundreds and hundreds of things that you could use. Again, most of them are not animal-based. Most of them are plants and minerals. And each one of them tells you what the thing is and how you could use it and all kinds of things. I can't tell you that every one of these things are still being used. But this is the way they call them for the people who are listening. We have crabs and flies and beavers and lizards and fish and spiders and a whole wild assortment here of things that they use. Of all kinds of wild assortment of animals and plants that they use. I can't tell you that every one of these is still being used nowadays. Many of them still are. And here you see that they're sort of Latin names or they're homeopathic names, which are usually either exactly the Latin or a variation of that. Okay, so
you just pulled this from the pharmacopoeia.
These lists are from the pharmacopoeia from 100 years ago.
They're not American, though.
The ones on the previous screen were things that they're being used like right now. Those are the ones that are mamish. You could go right now. The Asala, I can't pronounce it. Whatever that one was, that's like it's a big popular one. Okay, these ones I can't even tell that they're all being used right now. Okay, I'm just trying to just show you the idea that out there in their world, okay, but these are at 100. This is 20. I don't know, 10, 15, 20, out of hundreds of maybe thousands of items that they use. Some of them are animal based. Okay, so before we get into we have 4 questions to deal with about the homeopathic medicine. Before we get into that, I just wanted to explain to you that the homeopathy is based on 2 theories. Okay, it's worth it for us to say just for a minute. It's based on 2 theories. Okay, and the first theory is that the way you cure something is by giving a tincture, giving some kind of a medicinal item that replicates the symptoms of what the person has.
Tincture.
Okay, you give them the person.
That's an English word?
It's an English word. T-I-N-T. Whatever. Yeah, well, that's a tincture. Yeah. You give them something that replicates the symptoms that they have. Okay, so the person's got a pain in his liver, and we give them some kind of thing that replicates that. That somehow that has to do with healing him. But that's true or not, I don't know.
Well,
okay.
It's, you know where it comes from.
No.
I mean, the idea of a vaccination is
Well, okay, maybe
similar.
Something like that. Okay, and from that comes the term homeopathy, because I think it's in Greek. Latin, whatever. Homeos means similar, and pathos means suffering. Okay, so homeopathy is if you make similar suffering, we duplicate what the person has wrong with them, then somehow that's going to help cure you. Okay, that's the first cure. Okay, whether that's true or not our business. Okay, that's the first.
To make his liver hurt more.
You give something that has to do with replicating that pain, and that will somehow lead to curing him. Okay, but the second theory, the second is the more famous one. Okay, this is where the name comes from, homeopathy. Okay, but the second is. The second is like this. It says that the more dilute the medicine is, the more effective it is. The less and less that you get, the better off you are. Okay? Now, that sounds completely counterintuitive. I mean, the less of something that you get, the better it is. Okay, and the way they work is like this. Every medicine that you buy, every remedy, every homeopathic remedy that you buy is going to say the following. It's going to have a name, a number, and a letter. Okay, so, for example, it'll say on it, I can't pronounce this, what I wrote here, Aciculus hippocostanum, 6X. Okay, what does that mean? That means it's got that item in it, this, whatever I just tried to pronounce, I couldn't do, Aciculus hippocostanum, whatever it is, and it's got it in 6X. What does 6X mean? X is the Roman numeral for 10. So, X means that it was diluted first 9 to 1, that would be a 1X, 2, then it was diluted again 9 to 1, that would be 81 to 1, that would be a 2X. And they kept on diluting it till the point that it got to be a 6X, which was about 500,000 to 1. Okay? By the time they got it to 6X, they did 9 to 1, then again 9 to 1, then again 9 to 1, all the way down to being a 6X. And at 6X, X and T are interchangeable.
You're math right?
I thought so.
Sounds like a scam.
You can try it afterwards. Okay. I didn't excel.
I tried for more for that.
So an X or a D are the 10 are the ones that are 10. D like as in decimal, or X as in Roman numeral X. So a 6X. This is a 6X. It's about 500,000 to 1. Okay. Then this is the X. This is the one doing by X. Okay. X is the lowest type of dilution. Okay. Then there's also C dilutions. Okay. C is the Roman numeral for 100. Okay. So C dilutions mean that the first time they did it, it was 99 to 1. Okay. And the person who founded homeopathy about 200 years ago, the person who founded it, he thought that 30C was the best dilution. That's the number of what 30C is.
Okay, at some point, why don't you just keep doing more and more and more? I guess at some point it's...
Always get diluted?
No?
Well, that's what you would think. That's not what they think. That's not how they approach it.
Do 6 C's, 100 C's, 1 million C's.
So wait. They don't just do C's. They do M's and Q's. There are other things that are beyond 99 to 1. They even start at beyond C's.
How do you measure whether something's in that?
So I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that what they do is I don't believe that they actually keep diluting it in 100 times itself. I think they take an ounce of it. No, they take 1 ounce of it out and dilute that 1 ounce in 99 ounces of something. And then they take an ounce. Look, they don't take when they took 1 ounce and dilute it to 99 ounces. Now they have 100 ounces. Okay, so then I can put 100 ounces into 10,000 ounces. They take 1 ounce out of the 100 and put it into another 100. These 99 get thrown in the garbage.
And you probably can't do. You can't skip steps either. You can't.
Right. No. That's of course
1 in a million.
No. That wouldn't work. You have to do it, and there's the shaking ritual that has to happen in between. If you put it into when you put it into one, you have to shake it up. There's a word for it. They have an official term for it. You have to shake it up a lot, and then go to the next one.
You have to distributed.
No. The shaking is a big part of the sheet of what it works. You have to give it a big shake, and then it goes on to the next one. Okay? So I can't even tell you. I can't even tell you what it is. When it's 30C, it's about a half of Google. That's what it's about. What it is. Okay? It's a to one. I mean, I can't pronounce it. There's about there are. I remember about 60 zeros to that. Okay? I mean, it's a tremendous amount. Okay, so and it goes worse. Okay, worse. It gets bigger than it's called, better or worse. There's M's and Q's and LM's. These are X and C's are pretty common. So when you see something that says Arnica montana 30C, that means there's got an herb called Arnica montana. Okay, and that is diluted first to a 1C, 2C, 3C, all the way up to 30C to 30C to this kind of a dilution. Okay, and that's the shita. The first part was you got to give them something that replicates what was wrong with the person, and then the second part of it was that you have to dilute it to. Okay, now I'm not gonna. There's huge debates. We're gonna talk about a drop later as to if it's possible in the world that something like this could work. Could it be that something diluted to that point could possibly work? That's not really what I'm saying. I just want to put it into perspective for you. Okay, just help put it into perspective. Okay, Lake Michigan has 2 quadrillion gallons of water. Okay. And I have a number here. I can't.
Quadrillion is after trillion?
After trillion, right? The next sets of the next 3 more zeros is quadrillion. Okay. And I have a number here for how much water there is in all the oceans in the world. But if you put one drop, a drop is an official measurement. Okay. If you put one drop of an active ingredient into all of Lake Michigan, okay, that would be an 11C, okay, or a 22X dilution. That's how much, if you put one drop, one kid would put in one drop, that would be the dilution. And it works, and the Atlantic Ocean would be a 13C. Okay? That's what it is. 30C is many, many times less than once in the Atlantic Ocean. And the way we figured out the cheshbon was that if you did a 10C, if you made a 10C dilution with 21D, it's about the same thing, a 10C dilution, you could give all 7 billion people in the world, each one of them could get 10 drops of that medicine for 1 million years. Okay? That's how much you would have. That's how much you would have just produced on this one drop of active ingredient, diluted to the point that it would be 10C. You fully diluted it. You took one drop into 9 more drops, and then 9 drops. You kept on doing it. By the time you hit 10C, you could give 7 billion people 10 drops a day for 1 million years. Okay? So it's really diluted. Okay, and we'll see how that's going to get to what I'm talking about.
The point is, there's not even one molecule left. The chances are the hyper, there's only one molecule. So
that's what the scientists say.
It doesn't assign water.
The scientists say.
The scientists.
We're not. We're not.
Agree with you. The homeopathic people agree with you.
Well, this was just for perspective. I really didn't want to talk about this, but for perspective, this thing is about 200 years old. This whole shita, which was before science understood the concept of atoms and molecules and things like that, because they didn't have such a perspective. So at that time, diluting it more and more, they didn't see an end to it. They didn't see that if you dilute so much, it's just smaller and smaller amounts, like certain traces or whatever it is. And modern science that sees atoms and molecules and has ideas like that says, in fact, that it's not possible there's even one molecule in the finished product.
It's not possible. It's highly unlikely.
Well, someone's got the molecule.
Right.
Someone's got it, but just about everybody doesn't. Okay, just about most of the molecules are someplace. But just about everybody doesn't have anything. Okay? But the homeopathists are not part of that. We'll talk about later how that's going to get to the shot. Okay. So we're going to have... So, as I told you, this is homeopathy. Okay? This is not other alternative medicines. Okay? Other alternative medicines have their own things to them. Okay? But homeopathy, this is a unique thing to homeopathy that you do like this. Okay. So we have 4... that I see 4 shilas to talk about this kind of medicines. Okay. The first one is... the thing that catches your attention first. I don't think it's the most serious issue, but the thing that most strikes you first is, I just told you that they potentially make this out of animal products. So how does that affect it? If I take a medicine, now if I pick it up and it says Arnica montana on it, so I know that it's made from the herb. What if I pick it up and I don't know what it is, or I know what it is, and you look into the terms, it's not a secret what they are. It's not a secret. If you look up what it means, Formica rufa, that means ants, that's not a secret. Okay, and it says right in the Bible, it says Formica rufa 6X, it says what the thing is in it. So you look into the thing. So the most obvious question, I don't believe the most serious, but the most obvious question is that the active ingredient could be made out of a trait, out of an ant, or a beetle, or who knows what else. Okay. That's the first question.
I mean, you have to see what that is.
But it's not a secret. It's not a secret. It's not a secret. It's very clear and open. You can open up the pharmacopoeia and find out what it is. Or you can just look it up. It's not a secret at all. I know what it is. Everybody else can know what it is. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down for you the animal products, the way I see it, the ones that they use, into 6 groups. Okay? Into 6 groups. And the 6 groups, in my way of looking at it, we're going to go from least serious, it should say in increasing order of seriousness. That's what it should say. Okay, it's in increasing order of seriousness. Okay, that's the first one you can see are the least serious, and then get more and more of the animal products. Okay, and the first one is like this. The scientists, whenever they decided to do this, sat down and broke down. They tried to categorize things in the world. Okay, so scientists have, based on their criteria, have decided what things are. So, for example, their criteria, la dafka, that mix meet what the Hamoin Am thinks is the same criteria. The best example of that is a whale is not considered a fish; it's considered a mammal. Okay, even though if you take your kid to the aquarium, he looks and he says, "Of course, that's a fish." Because from our perspective, a fish is something that swims around in the water. That's a fish. Okay, that's how we look at it as fish. A scientist has his way of categorizing. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's a different way to categorize it. So he said, "No, it's not a fish. It's a mammal." Okay, so the sometimes scientific way of categorizing something, lav dafka the same way that we or the Torah would categorize it. Okay. So the first one is that there's something called, there are kingdoms. Okay, the world is broken down scientifically into kingdoms. That's like one of the highest levels. And the kingdom of animal things is called animalia. Okay, imagine that. That's what it's called. And in that, one of the major, I forgot what it's called. The next thing down of animalia is something called sea sponges. Okay, and sea sponges are items. They look like. The closest that I could wait of describing it is they look like a paint roller. Okay? A roller for paint, like one of those spongy things. And that's what they are. They grow as these sponges down in the ocean. And what they do is they have no organs. They have no moving parts. And all they are is they sit there as a sponge. And as the water passes through the sponge, being as it's a spongy type material, it catches things that are good for the sponge. Okay? Things that are small little, I don't want to use the word fish, but small little things that are passing by get caught in it and get digested by the sea sponge, and that's how it lives. Okay, but it doesn't have a heart, it doesn't have organs, it doesn't have legs, it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything like that. Okay, but it's considered animal.
Nerves?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's considered an animal because it has eukaryotic cells and it has an aerobic form of metabolism. Okay, I haven't a clue what either of those mean, but it has these different categories that scientifically is considered an animal. But we pumped one day. Rabbi Fishman was traveling with Rabbi Heinlein, and he said, "Does anybody have any shilos for Rabbi Heinlein? Because I'm traveling with him." That's what he said. He asked some people, "Do you have any shilos for him?" So I said, "Yeah, I was working on this right now." I said, "Ask him whether he thinks this stuff are animals." So he said, from the Torah's perspective, if something doesn't move around, that's not an animal, then it's a plant. If something that stays where it is considered a plant. To be an animal means it walks around. Cats move around from place to place, and animals and plants don't. So from that perspective, these are plants.
What makes it different than a rock? So it's
it grows. It grows. It gets bigger and bigger.
What makes that different than an apple tree?
Nothing. So that's what it's an apple tree. That's what it is. It grows. It's under the water. But scientifically, so I'm saying is like this. And homeopath, these are called spongiatosta. Okay, that's what they call them from the homeopathic world.
Spanish.
And they try to sound Latin. That's what the church is. They're trying to sound. So they would consider this an animal product. Okay, actually, one of the companies that makes things sent me a list of all their products. Sent me a list. No, I'm saying what I'm trying to say is that within what they consider animal products, are the animal products an issue? A company sent me a list of these are all our items, and which ones are animals, and which ones have shellfish, and which ones have weed, and which ones have whatever, a whole bunch of categories, and they put all these sponges, what they call the spongiatosis, into that. But we wouldn't consider that to be animal.
It's not giving an halacha, just...
No, it's not giving is that when you look at it, you say, oh, it has animal in it. No, it doesn't have animal. Right.
Right. Venus flytrap would be a plant?
I'm guessing it's a plant. Yeah.
Okay. You say that if it's an animal, the also ranges then?
Well, if it's an animal, does it have fins and scales? No, it doesn't have fins and scales. It's in the water.
We'd have to be a sheriff, or it has to be
right, it's not, no, it wouldn't be kosher. No, if it was an animal.
Magnum Paskin, you could eat this.
He didn't actually pick up a sponge and eat it, but when we described him what we are, he said, no, that thing's not an animal. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, the next thing is,
I agree with it. Okay.
the next thing is, the next thing is, we touched on this in a different time. We're going to do it more when we get, I think, to Dalit. And that is like this. Just because something comes from an animal, just because something is a excretion or a byproduct of an animal, doesn't mean it's usher, because the big exception to that rule is things that are classified as pirsha. Okay, the easiest way to say it is they're excrement or waste products from an animal. Those things are not considered to be, they're not usher. They came from the animal, but when we use the word yotze, we mean, yotze means an edible, functional, usable part, like milk, but pirsha is not considered it. So for example, one of the things that they use is deer antler velvet. Okay, that's, deers on their antlers, they have fuzzy stuff that comes off at whatever time of the year that it comes off, and that's used in homeopathic remedies. That's pirsha. Okay, that's not any functional, usable, edible item. It's edible.
Edible?
We're going to get to that in halakha, what the definition is, but it would
I
qualify.
think the difference between pirsha and yotze, like milk.
Halakha. That's what we talk about in halakha. But there's lots of these things like this that are pirsha. That's what we haven't really talked about. We just mentioned such a concept. That some of these things are not really. So you say, oh my gosh, it comes from deers. Well, deer antler come from deer antler. We would say that would be pirsha. Okay, next. Then there are other things that come from animal products that are mutter. They come from animals and they're edible and they're mutter. Okay, and for example, the simplest example of that is honey. Honey comes from animals. We'll get to that in the end of the simon. That honey is mutter. Okay, so there's a cousin. I didn't say something special. I didn't say not. But what I'm saying is that it's an animal product. It comes from honey, but it's kosher. And then we mentioned also that one of the things that people use is cuttlefishing. Okay, they use cuttlefishing to make. And the Ratzina made a point. If you remember, we spoke about this. That it's only the yotze of a fish is only asur midrabanan. Okay, so it's only asur midrabanan. So that is to say, they're not like honey. Honey is completely mutter, but that yotze is only. We mentioned this. Somebody, I think it was, I don't remember. That it's only asur midrabanan. It's only asur midrabanan. And there's other ones. You saw sea fish, sea nettles.
Fish ink. You right with that?
No, it's a black liquid that comes out of this. That it secretes.
It's used for paint.
It's using for dyeing.
Not for dyeing.
Not for dyeing?
Well, they did. It's not.
Who used the paint? Sure.
They used to use it for paint.
Okay. We saw beforehand, we saw a medusa and an asterius rubinus, a starfish, and all kinds of unusual things. The yotze in them are only asur midrabanan. Why do I care if it's only asur midrabanan? Because for a choila, things that are asur midrabanan are not as serious. So again, these are things that are coming from animal products. Okay, so I'm just trying to cut you down. The last one's going to be just plain old fashioned trade animal products. But these are things that are. These are things that are animal. And if you ask the company, they will tell you, yeah, it comes from cuttlefish, or it comes from a bee. It's a honey. But what does that yet mean that it's us? Okay.
Very good.
Next. Okay, we got 6. Next. That was 3. 1, 2, and 3.
Not a count.
Okay. And the next thing is, so now, then we have ones that are going to be just, they are asur. They think that the yotze from an item that's asur. But what we're going to talk the next part we're going to talk about is what happens. No one eats the stuff by itself. I told you how diluted they make it. Okay, so some of the things are some of the products that they use are things that are noshim tam of gam. Okay, the things that we know are noshim tam of gam. It says in the din, if you have from bees and bugs and things like that, these are things. If you crush that up, that's a noshim tam of gam. So as soon as you start diluting it, it's going to be automatically mutter because noshim tam of gam is batul b'roiv. Okay, these things are mutter right away. So these are asur. Okay, in this, what you're going to see on this screen, these things are all asur, but it's really easy to not worry about it. Okay, it's really easy to be mevatel to not worry about it because it's noshim tam of gam.
And it will be mutter.
It will be mutter then. But we're going to talk about it in a second. Whether that's mutter. I talked about 4 sides of it. This is only the first. Okay, but we have 3 other things to deal with. Okay, this I told you is the least. I think the first one is the least serious question. Okay, similar to that is a question. This I don't think that I'm right about what I'm about to say. Okay? The question that I'll explain to you why, and that is they make some of these things out of poisons. Remember, I told you you're trying to replicate. The theory is you're going to replicate the problem. Okay, so as you can imagine, poisons could do that, and therefore those are also that's like a subcategory of noshim tam of gam because things that are poisonous are also batul b'roiv. They're also things that are not roiv again. But when I thought about this at first, I mentioned this to Rabbi Heber. And he said to me, Dr. Pollack said we were wrong about that. He didn't tell him why. He had told him before that we were wrong with that. Because he said there's a difference between in our minds, poisons and venoms are the same thing. And he said, no, they're not the same thing. Poison and venom are not hainuhach. Poison means something that if you ingest it, it'll be dangerous to you. At an amount that if you ingest it in a normal amount, it'll be dangerous. And venom means dafka something that if you get into your bloodstream, and you get bitten by it, then that'll be dangerous to you. Okay, and the nafkamina is venoms. If you swallow venom, it's not dangerous. But if you swallow a venom, your body will digest it, and by the time it gets into your bloodstream, it'll be nothing. It won't be poisonous.
How do
you know it's royal achila?
Venom?
How do you know? No, so I thought it's not royal achila because it's dangerous to you. But he says, la dafka is it dangerous to eat? It's dangerous to poke yourself with it because it goes right into your blood. That would be dangerous. Or into your
There was a guy that
muscles or whatever.
a snake handler that made himself immune by every day drinking some little bit of venom.
Okay.
That was his.
So I don't know. There's talk of such thing like that. Dr. Pollack is saying that when you eat the venom, it doesn't have the same effect as it going into your skin. I don't know if it's a kashrus or it's not a kashrus. So I was thinking that by a venom by nature it's not Talmud of Gam. It's the same idea. It's not Talmud of Gam that it's not royal achila. It'll be Bitul also right away. Dr. Pollack says la dafka. I guess you have to try each one. La dafka, but a venom and a poison are not the same thing. And a venom, by eating it, may not be dangerous at all. Usually anybody who says that says, do not try this at home. You shouldn't go through knowledge of venom. But his initial approach to it was that venom's not. Okay? And last is the plain old trade thing. This is a, I can't pronounce it. Conium. I can't pronounce it. But
It's like a duck.
It's a duck.
It is.
It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck.
Ducks are kosher.
Okay, it's a yoitze from that. We'll actually talk about that in a few times. Whether the eggs get shallowed. Okay, it's a good question. No, we have to talk about that. It's in the veil. It's in the veil. Okay, it's in the veil. But when they have it, it's
an actual duck.
An extract from the duck. That's how we're going back now. It's a yoitze. If I remember, it's in the lip. If I remember, it's in the lip. I'm not 100%. I think it's on the lip. Okay.
What about like bones with
Okay, sure.
not dry bones?
What about dry bones?
Aren't they mutter?
I don't remember hearing that they use dry bones. Again, I did not read through all thousands of their. You cannot believe how many things these guys have.
I know, we
that they use.
have a couple companies like that.
That use this stuff.
No, they sell all this stuff.
Okay.
So quite some companies?
Yeah. What's it? Organic. Something. What's it?
Okay. Yes, we have a tack. I now remember that. Yes, we have a strange company that does some of these funny things. Okay.
That's a whole separate shear. It's a little bit topic.
Yes.
What we can do it. There's one
I was going to mention. Yeah, no, correct. Very good. Good. I was going to mention
They
that
send
later.
those lists. We have to go through all the things that because they have funny names to figure out which company.
Okay. Yeah. We have this.
Take it off.
We don't need to mention it.
Hey, can you page one over?
Okay, good. Good. You drowned that. Okay. Anyhow, sit down. So, you put D&D. Okay. So the first thing you have to deal. The first thing we thought about, which is the one that catches your attention most, is maybe the thing itself is strange. Okay, that's the thing that catches your attention. And we see here that not la dafka is that the most serious question is. Okay. The second part is you can block it now. There's no more slides. Okay. The second part is the second shot we have to deal with is this is once you thought about it, I described to you how it works, is Bitul. Okay, which is to say like this. I told you that these are the whole sheet that is to use it diluted to crazy numbers. Okay, I'll go back.
DOA does that.
Warren, please come to the front desk. Warren, front desk.
You could just pull it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so but we had even these are the X dilutions, these are the small ones, or the big dilutions. So they're diluted in
This.
the company, people who make it. So it's diluted in crazy amounts. So the first thing you look at is you say, you know what? Something like this is to us. The first look at it is that obviously the thing is obviously Bitul, and therefore, what do I care if the active ingredient was traced? So what? It came from a duck. Who cares if it came from a duck? But it's diluted in 500,000 to 1. What do I care that it's in there? How much? There's so little bit in there. It should make a difference. Okay. So there's two questions on that. Two things to think about that issue, and they are as follows. And this is a shadow just for the X and the dilution. That is to say, 10 to 1. Okay, and that is as follows. We know that there's a din called ChaNaN. ChaNaN means that if you do exactly like this, you dilute something in 9 to 1, then we look at all 10 now as being usher. So when you dilute it the next time 9 to 1, it's not Bitul, it's not 81 to 1 now. Now it's 9 to 1. It's again not possible. Okay, so, and it keeps on going like that. So ChaNaN, Chatichanas Veil means the first time you diluted it, it didn't become, it's no longer looked at as being as a 9 to 1 ratio. It's looked at as being as 100% Isser. If I have 100% Isser, the next time I dilute it is again 9 to 1.
Let's say keep pouring it in. I don't know how they dilute it.
They take, what we use an ounce. They take an ounce and they put it into 9 ounces of, we'll talk about what they put into in a second. They put it into 9 ounces. They shake it up, and now they take it and they put that into, now they have 10 ounces. They put that into 90 ounces.
No, so you said take out 1 ounce.
No, so you missed that part. Because that's part of the shaker. You have to shake it and do the thing in between and move it to the next one.
Take out 1 ounce and put it in another 10.
You can do that also. The same idea. The same idea if you take 1 ounce and put it into another 9.
They're getting to 130 seeds, they're not putting it into...
Right. That's how I guess that. But they don't say that. But yes, we'll get to that at a certain point they stop.
So it becomes Bitul once you do 1 to 60.
The problem is,
I
Chatichanas is the Veil.
understand. But once you pass...
But you'll never get, if you have ChaNaN, if you're using a 1C dilution, it's 9 times 1 the first time, so it's Bitul.
Right.
Okay? But if you do a 1X dilution, if you keep doing X dilutions, every time you do it, it's only in 9 times. So it keeps saying, oh, now it's 100% Isser. Do it again now. So now it's already at 500,000 to 1.
Cold or hot?
Okay, so very good. Very good, Yankee. Okay, so very good. So, I mean, we're getting right to that. So the first thing, Rabbi Heber says, there's a machlokes. The Taz in Simon Tzadi Beis about ChaNaN brings from a Marshal that says that we don't say ChaNaN when we mix things cold together without any heat between them. There's no ChaNaN. Okay, that's what the Marshal says. The Dakichuva brings that the Yakuda is makel that also. Rabbi Hanan told them they can be makel that, which is what goes on over here. Okay, we have cold dilutions. So as soon as you hit a 2x, okay. I can't say nobody buys 1X, but that's not the way you usually buy it. As soon as you hit a 2X, or any C, or any M, or anything like that, it's always going to be Bitul. Okay. So, the Ramah, very good. So the Taz, so it's a shiloh what the Ramah means. The Taz says that the Ramah argues. It's a question of what the Ramah means. It's a Mechutz Nachronim. The Aruch Shulchan says, in Simon Kuf, he says, everybody's asking that it's also. Okay? That's what he says. But the Yahud attack is Mekel. And the Taz brings from Marshal. The Taz himself is not Mekel. The Taz says, the Ramah says not like this. Okay? But it's a Shayim Lachman.
Even without saying it's not, it's lach b'shari soup.
But he knows. He says it's only considered lach b'lach when there's heat involved. Oh, you want to be Mekel because of that? Okay, that's correct. So another tzad to be Mekel is if it's only lach b'lach b'shari soup.
Especially if it's in Rabbanon.
And we're talking, it's not Yisrael Rabbanon. Some of the Yisrael Rabbanon. Yes, some of the Yisrael Rabbanon. And we're talking about for a chayla. Okay, we're talking about someone who said, so that's potentially to make that's a different angle. The one angle was that it's cold. One angle was that it's lach b'lach. Okay, another angle is that in order to say ChaNaN, one of the rules of ChaNaN is it has to be yeduah hataruvas. Someone has to realize that the dilution happened. Okay? In other words, someone has to realize that you made it into a 9 to 1 dilution and say, and at that, yeduah hataruvas makes it that now, there's now a chaticha that became aser. Now when you mix it the next time, we now say chaticha nasas lebeh. Okay? It's a shayil nachronim whether that yeduah has to be by somebody who understands the significance of what happened, meaning a yid who saw it happen realizes that now it became aser, or does yeduah hataruvas just mean is someone has to know that it happened. Someone did know. The guys in the factory know that it happened. They know they did 1 to 9. They know what they did. It didn't happen in a by mistake or by itself. Someone knew about it. Okay, and Rabbi Shachar thinks you could be makel about that child. He wasn't talking about homeopathy, but about that child, the yeduah hataruvas needs someone who understands the significance of what happened. That the yid saw that this got mixed and he says, that just became aser. The chaticha just became the nevela. Now I mix it in again, it's a problem of Bitul. But here the yeduah, there was no yeduah hataruvas. It's happening in some factory that nobody knows about.
So I guess a Mashiach need to be worse.
Right. You have a problem with this Mashiach, so that's correct. Okay. And then last is, I don't have a basis for what I'm going to say, but you have to wonder if at a certain point, if ChaNaN runs out. Okay, in other words, when we got to something being 500,000 to 1, or 3.5 billion to 1, okay, 10x is 3.5 billion to 1, okay? So at some point, does ChaNaN, so to speak, run out? I mean, how many times can we keep saying ChaNaN? It's a door, so maybe not, I don't have a basis, but is there a point where we got to 12 quintillion, okay, at 20x, do we run out? Do we say, come on guys, it can't be ChaNaN goes everywhere? Well, no, too bad, ChaNaN is ChaNaN, it's safe.
This year we're taking the things that are not Bitul. This year there was some Yeshayim that at 970.
960.
960 it is Bitul.
Right. But we don't hold like that. We don't pass like the Rosh. We don't pass like 960
that at all.
Right.
Not just chak, nothing.
Right. So when you have a 4x, it's only 6,500 to 1. So you say, okay, that's not enough yet. But but is there a point that even though we don't hold like that, we don't hold that 961 is enough to say it's not a mashu, but at 12 quintillion, is that a certain point?
That is the high Moses thing, the famous beer and the yam.
Right. So that was a different child.
The whole yam is not also Pesach.
Right. That's a different child. That's to say that even a mashu has an extent how far it goes.
Right.
But here,
That's just a point smart.
right. Okay. So it's the same idea.
There's no point. It's got to be, it's not a molecule left in the thing,
Say it that way. So I'm saying that's the idea I'm making is that maybe.
Somebody put beer on the lake.
What happens? What happens if 1 year on Pesach drops a cookie into the Kinneret and then no one could drink water to shore because one guy dropped the cookie into the Yes, okay. Now the second child of Bitul is a different child of Bitul. A different child of Bitul. A different child of Bitul is like this. We talked about this, and that is the Rashba says when somebody puts something in on purpose, it can't be Bitul. Bitul means is I don't want it. It's unimportant. It's so minuscule. It's like no, he doesn't say it. It's similar. No. He says it even b'diavad. He says it even b'diavad. No, the point is, since I wanted it in there, that negates the idea that it's being bottled. How can you say it's bottled when I want it in there? That's what I'm trying. It's important for what I'm doing. So the Rashba said this. So there are those who say like the Rashba. There are those who accept the Rashba. Yehuda brings a long list of Rishonim argue. He thinks that we argue. Rav Moshe brings in a tshuva that Rabbi Tait said to him, this is in his range, his realm, that Rabbi Tait said to him that Ken Zayin were only machmir for the Rashba, even those who follow him. There's a few people in Hilchos Pesach who say like the Rashba. Maybe we're only saying that the Indian thinks that Asher B'Hana. Okay, maybe it's worse when it's Asher B'Hana. It's not what the Rashba says, but maybe all the people who follow the Rashba are talking about Pesach, talking about things that are Asher B'Hana. So maybe it's more common than that, but other Yisurim like this, like, ducks are not Asher B'Hana. So maybe other things that are not Asher B'Hana, we wouldn't be Choshesh.
What was the subject in Pesach?
No, they were talking about if a person put, he had a clarifying agent that he put into his wine that was chametz. But he wants it in there, but it's in tiny amounts. That's bottled. But it's there on purpose because I think that's what it was for clarifying. Maybe I'm making a mistake. If it was a clarifying, maybe it was something else. Maybe I'm making that wrong. I don't remember. It was a case where the guy wanted it in. I don't remember what the case was. Okay. Then there's another thing, which is we have to question whether the Rashba applies to our case. And the reason why I say it is like this: it's true that the thing is being sold as the medicine. It says on the package what it is. It says this is. It doesn't say this anymore. It says this is from ducks. Okay? That's the point. That is the active ingredient. But does it mean something? The fact that the shita is that you have to dilute it. Okay? The shita is it has to be in minuscule amounts. That the less that you have, the better. Does that maybe somehow go against what the Rashba said? The Rashba says if you want it in there, so they do want it. You can't say they don't want it. But they don't want it to be there in a meaningful amount. They Badafka want it to not be meaningful. Maybe that makes a difference. I'm not convinced that I'm right about that. Okay. So we talked about two of our shilas so far. One is the thing itself, and one is maybe the active ingredient should be bottled. And B'dar Klal, in the X's we have a little bit of a shilah. Things that come with 2X or 5X like that, they have a little bit of a shilah. But anything from the C's or the M's and those are automatically going to be bottled. Okay, because in the C is the next step up. It's already a 99 to 1 the first time. So the chashash of the active ingredient is not so serious. Okay, and even in the X's, where it's 9 to 1, as we said, there's reason to think that it could be bottled as long as you get past the 1X. As soon as you get like a 2X, you could already think that it could be bottled. Okay. The more serious shayla is, two more things we have to talk about. And that is...
You have to talk about Bitul and Shulchan?
No, because they're doing it for you. Well, they're doing it.
I got to do it for you.
Okay, so... I wasn't going to talk about that. I mean, there's a question whether if a company does something, if they did it dafka for the year, then it would be Bitul Sechatilo. If they do it for general marketing purposes, and some of their customers happen to be it, and we usually assume that's not Bitul Sechatilo. Even though
we wouldn't give it extra.
Right, we wouldn't give it extra. I shouldn't say that. I should have mentioned that point. These things about it being bottled, we wouldn't let somebody do Lechatilo. No, we wouldn't let somebody take ducks and stick it in there and say, oh, it's going to be bottled. We wouldn't let someone do it. Right, for hashkach. I'm talking about if you could eat it, you just want to buy it in the store and eat it. Okay, the next thing, which is much more serious than the active ingredient, is the inactive ingredients.
So a Jewish company couldn't do it, though. Jewish company
could. Okay. They would have to be stuck with the thousands of other herbs. And that way they wouldn't be able to sell you ducks. They'd have to say, okay. As I said, most of the stuff is not animal products. Okay. The inactive ingredients, by me, seems to be a more serious question. And that is, When they do this dilution, I kept telling you they keep diluting an ounce of this into 9 ounces of this or into 99 ounces. Okay, the preferred choice of what to dilute it in is either alcohol or a mixture of alcohol and water. Okay? That's what you're supposed to dilute it in when you make these things. Okay, so that's how their system works. Okay, so that means to say is when you get a bottle of liquid homeopathic remedy, you're really getting a bottle of alcohol or alcohol and water with the most tiny amount of the active ingredient. We're finished with the active ingredient, but really what you're buying is a bottle basically of either alcohol or alcohol and water. That's what you're buying. Okay, so it's the inactive ingredient that's getting us because alcohol, as you all know, is underneath hashgacha to it. Okay, so that's when it comes in liquid form. The other way that it comes, the other common way that it comes is in dissolvable tablets. Like you put it on your tongue or under your tongue and it dissolves in your mouth. Those come in two forms. Some of them come in sugar. That's the inactive ingredient, so that's okay. And some of them come in lactose. So it's pretty common that they come in lactose. Some, I guess, lactose seems more natural. So it comes in lactose. And lactose also is something that needs hashgacha. Okay, so so that would say to us, so maybe we have a problem. It's pretty rare to find these in pill form like you just swallow. Okay, so what is like this? If it comes in drops, in liquid form, the person who uses it is supposed to dilute it himself. That's what he's supposed to do. You're not supposed to just drink the stuff. Okay? The instructions will say like, take 3 drops in an 8-ounce cup of water twice a day. Something like that. The instructions will be, take from the little bottle that I'm selling you and put in 2 drops into your water and then drink it down or put it into juice and drink it down. So then, it's going to be bottled. The drops that you're going to put into your cup are going to be bottled. And the Shach says that when it's not Bitul when it's only Safik Isser. So the alcohol is only Safik Isser. We'll see in a second, it's probably not Isser at all. It's only Safik Isser, so there's no Isser to be Mavatal Safik Isser l'chafila. So when I take the container of basically the alcohol and I put in 2 drops into my cup of juice, so I'm only being Mavatal Safik Isser, and that you're allowed to do. Okay? So we have more of a question than when a person wants to take the ones that come in dissolving tablets, which is pretty common. They come like these little tubes. No. Dissolving tablet I mean that you put in your mouth. You just put it under your tongue or on top of your tongue and it just dissolves in your mouth. And the reasons to be making about that are that, first of all, alcohol and lactose don't have tremendous shilos to them. Each one has shilos to them. Alcohol has, I guess we'll talk about alcohol anymore. Alcohol has shilos that come from stam yayin or gvinas akum or challah. And lactose, of course, aside from being milchids, it has shilos of whey. If you remember when we learned about that, lactose is a byproduct of whey. Whey is a byproduct of making cheese. If you take the whey, you can filter the whey, and one part that comes out is the lactose. So the shilos that are to whey apply to lactose also. Shilos of gvinas akum, potential of gvinas akum or blias of gvinas akum. So it's Lamaisa is we talked about liquor. That in Kuf Yudalad, Ramah says that there's something called Toilim B'Drabanan, that when you have in very specific cases, you have something that's a potential Issa Drabanan, and you're not sure whether what you got is the Issa or you got is the Heter, then you're allowed to assume that you got the Heter. Okay? When things are Issa Drabanan. So, again, we don't give hashgacha like that, and we don't recommend things to that, but the question is that for a choila, that's our next part, maybe the person's a choila, for a choila, we would follow what the Shach says. It could be Toilim B'Drabanan. I mean, in the case in the shop there, in the liquor things, it's even to do with l'chafila, that you could say, if I have a question, did I get Issa Drabanan or not? Did I get the lactose that's from the company that's kosher or the company that's treif? So, the shop says we could take Toilim B'Drabanan, that we assume, like when something's at most Issa Drabanan, think of it as like a Safek Drabanan l'kula type of thing. When I had at most Issa Drabanan, I'm allowed to assume I got the not Issa Drabanan. And that term of Drabanan is one of the reasons, I'll mention for the liquor part of it, for the liquor, of why it was suggested, I don't have to be choishes that they use stam yayin barrels, because I can assume that I got ones that were not made with those barrels. I could be told that mine was not made in those barrels. Okay?
You want to be other things for a chayla, you can't avoid the discussion, is this stuff legitimate or not?
That's the next point. So our next question is going to be is, can we use the coolers that we reply to a chayla for this part? That's our next part. That's my next part. Homeopathic. That's right. That's my question. Okay. So the potentially when you look at the food and say, it's made out of lactose. Lactose is something that we would not be matter. We would say it needs hashgacha on it because it does, because it have blias of gvinas akum. Since those blias are only drabanan, most lactose is kosher anyhow. That's the truth. But since the most is just Rabbanan, we have this potential to say is we'd be telling with Rabbanan. Again, we wouldn't usually tell someone to just take something well, it can't be more than this is Rabbanan, but the shot is named for a Chayla B'Shodi, which leads right into our next thing, which Yossi said, which is, do we give the cools of a Chayla to these kind of people, to this type of medicine? The person might be a Chayla. I question it. The question is, does these kind of does homeopathic remedies qualify for cools that we give to Chaylim to give them certain medicine?
Does it make a difference what sickness he has to? I mean, the guy feels, when I get up, I don't have that strength. Mm-hmm. So he goes to a homeopathic remedy, he says, okay, I'll give you something that's going to give you a booster.
Mm-hmm. So you're right. That's a good point. You're right. Many people take these remedies not for things that qualify them as Chaylim altogether. You're right. They might take it just down for claims, just things that are not considered chayil. You're right. For what we're going to talk about to be a chayil, we have to be a chayil she'en b'sakana. Someone who's like, non-functional without this thing. So you're right. We're only talking about that maybe, assuming the person is that sick, and he wants to take this remedy, does it qualify for the cools that go with these remedies? Okay, so the Ramah says in Simkuf Nun Hey, near there, says that you can only give, if you have a chayla and you want to give him something that's treif, under the right circumstances you can give it to him. He says it has to be that it's refuah, yeduah, or al pi mumcha. Okay, it has to be either a known refuah, or al pi mumcha means that you have no clue whether this refuah works, but the person who's in front of you is we'll call him a licensed practitioner. He's someone who's a mumcha. So when he prescribes a medicine, you can take his word for it, so to speak, that what he's giving is something that's going to be effective for the person. Okay? So the question we're going to talk about is, what about homeopathy or other alternative medicines? How do you decide whether something is a refuah yeduah or not? Okay? How do we decide to say, because if it's a refuah yeduah, we can allow certain coolers for this person. Okay? And the question that's specific to homeopathy is that, the question that's specific is that modern science, the scientific methods of double-blind testing and all kinds of, and what he mentioned before about how many molecules there are on this and that, would say that this can't work. Modern science doesn't believe, so to speak. We'll talk about it more in a second. They don't accept that this could work medicinally, and therefore the question is, could it qualify as a refuah yeduah because there are people using it? We're going to get about that. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So I think that the answer to whether these things do or don't depends on a prima government in Aruch. He says like this. The Ramah in Kuf Nun Hey, if you look at Kuf Nun Hey, it's about a chayla she'en b'sakana, being over on Yisurim D'Rabbanan. Chayla she'en b'sakana is allowed to do certain Yisurim D'Rabbanan, and the Ramah is saying that when he wants to do that, he wants to take advantage of those coolers, it has to be a refuah yeduah or al pi mumcha. Okay? But the Taz, who's in Sim Pedalad, and the Magen Avraham in Aruch both use the same rule by people who are a suffix sakana. Okay, the Taz is talking about someone. He says he's nichbe shu kamaka shel chol. He's a person who's a suffix sakana. The Magen Avraham is talking about someone eating on Yom Kippur, I think it was, who's also a suffix sakana. So, and they say the same kind of rule. It has to be refuah yeduah or al pi mumcha. So the Pri Megadim says, why are they saying that? We understand in the case of the Ramah was talking about a person who's chayla she'en b'sakana, and midrabanan they're being maker to allow him to do certain things that he shouldn't be able to do. So Chacham say we're only going to let you do that in a case when you're a chayla that when the refuah is a refuah yeduah. Right? We understand that because the end possibility of him not taking the refuah is what? He'll be sick. Okay? But when the person's b'sakana, don't we have a rule that any suffix sakana is mutter? So why does it have to be a refuah yeduah? When the person's on the chayla she'en b'sakana, so the Chacham say in certain cases don't take the medicine. Because why? What's the worst that's going to happen? He'll be sick for another couple of days. That's the worst. It's just a chayla she'en b'sakana. But the Pri Megadim says, but if the guy's a chayla she'yesh b'sakana, why does it have to be a refuah yeduah? Why don't we say it could be that it's going to be effective? So why do we have to some kind of like it has to always work? We have to have seen that it works. We should be able to say anything should work for the person. He's a suffix sakana. Well, let him eat in Yom Kippur. So why are we saying only if it's a refuah yeduah? Why should we have that? It should be anything should work for that. Okay? So the Pri Megadim wants to answer one case by saying maybe that wasn't the case of sakana. That's not really answering all the kashrus. And there's a Darkei Tshuva in Sim Kuf Nun Hey who talks about this, who brings from Achronim all kinds of answers that were very not convincing. Okay, not such convincing answers. Okay? But I thought the answer was as follows, and I mentioned to Rabbi Friedman when I asked Rabbi Friedman the question, he told me the same answer. Okay, so that gives us a little more.
You're saying Pshat in the Pri Megadim, you're saying no.
I'm answering the kasha. The Pri Megadim basically leaves it as a kasha. So I'm going to try and answer the kasha. And I told you, when I answered him before I said anything, he told me the same answer. Okay? I say the answer is like this. What happens if there's a person? What happens if there's a person who's sick? Okay, he's sick and he's suffering sakana. Someone says, in a Basishur, there's a guy sitting in suffering sakana. And someone says, you know what? There's a McDonald's down the block. Let's go buy him a cheeseburger and we'll give it to him. They say to him, well, why should we give him a cheeseburger? He says, well, maybe a cheeseburger will heal him. I mean, we don't know how to heal this sickness. Maybe if we give him a cheeseburger, that'll heal him. So would we give it to him? We say, it's a suffix. Maybe a cheeseburger will help him. Or let's say we had a guy who was sick and we needed a doctor. So we sent the guy in a car on Shabbos driving around looking for a doctor. He wouldn't say that. He wouldn't say the guy just... if he knew where the doctor was, he would go try to find him. But would he just randomly drive him down the street and say, are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? Just walk down? We wouldn't say that. And the reason for those things is because even though the din is that there's no roy for sakanas, we don't follow any rules and anything that's even possibly going to help, but there's such a thing as something that's not even a suffix at all. Okay? There's no basis for thinking that giving the guy cheeseburger is going to make him better. So we can't just say...
break his fast, right.
I'm not talking about breaking his fast. I'm talking about a guy, Yankee, the guy had a heart attack. So he said, he had a heart attack. Maybe cheeseburger will help his heart. What is the cheeseburger going to help his heart? It has no tachas. So, in other words, I have no basis for thinking that giving him a cheeseburger is going to help the sickness that he has. So is it a suffix? I guess you could call it a suffix. Is it possible? You never know. Maybe cheeseburgers are what cure people who have strokes. Maybe it helps them. But we have no basis for saying that. There's no beginnings of thinking to say that, and therefore we don't say, maybe it's a something you could do it. It has to be even a possibility. There's a certain level that says, at this point it's not even...
You need to know that,
Right, so...
Somebody's going to be, somebody can concoct a theory and somebody will recognize it.
That's what the person community say. It has to be refuah yeduah. I mean, there has to be some track record for this thing that says that this has some shaykhs to helping somebody. Okay, so that's the track record. This guy's a theory. I don't think he comes up with a theory. He says, this, and he explains this. Who knows, maybe somebody, you could be shy. That's a track record. So you could have said that. You could have said that. But once you've heard what I said, you could say is, when they're saying it has to be refuah yeduah, or LP Mumcha, or somebody who's a Mumcha, who maybe a Mumcha is entitled to guess a theory. Well, not that Yossi Lin gets a theory. The person who's a Mumcha, so that's LP Mumcha. So there's two things. Either you do or LP Mumcha. If the Mumcha says it, well, maybe we'll try, so maybe that's also. But it's similar, what we're saying here is similar to what we've said over Chasam Sofer, who says that he had the following child, was that there were people who they buried and they found out that they weren't dead. Okay? So the Chasam Sofer said they weren't dead. Okay, so the government made up a rule that you have to keep people a certain amount of time before you bury them to make sure they're really dead. Right. So the Chasam Sofer says you're not allowed to do it. He says, it's a suffix sakana. We mentioned it's a suffix that maybe you're going to save a guy's life because you can do it. So the Chasam Sofer says the way his numbers work out is that when something is a chance only 1 in 100,000, that's not even a suffix. He says it's such a rarity that you're going to save the guy's life. We don't say it's a tiny chance. It's in this case, 1 in 100,000. He said that's not enough. That doesn't qualify to say now we have a suffix. So my point is, it's similar to what we're saying, that there are certain levels you say it's not that any crazy chances. Chance, we're going to take a very small chance. And that's why it says it has to be refuah yeduah. It doesn't use the term a refuah beduka. It doesn't have to be a tested refuah that meets all kinds of fancy criteria, but it has to be refuah yeduah. It means there's some maglayim ledover to say that this thing could work for what it's supposed to. We're not giving guys cheeseburgers because they had a heart attack. There's some basis for saying what it is. So now, this would answer the Pri Megadim's kasha for the case of sakana. Okay, now I'm extrapolating that that's also what the Ramah meant when he said by sakana. We didn't have to say that. For Eba sakana, you could just say it's a din drabonan that and maybe it has a higher standard. But the Tazim of the Ramah, for comparing it, seems to be thinking that that's the same kind of rule. Okay, so now that means that the scientists who've studied the traditional scientists who've studied homeopathy say that scientifically it doesn't work. Okay, that's what they say from a scientific perspective. They don't see that it works. But they do see Lamaisa, there are people getting better. I mean, the homeopaths are making money because people come back, because they get better. So they believe that it's placebo effect. Which is to say, when you give someone, when you have a long white coat and you give someone a pill and say, take this pill and make you better, it encourages the person's own self that he's confident he's going to get better, and somehow his body then therefore fights the disease. And they believe that it works like that. There was an article, there's a journal called Lancet. Okay, it's a very well-respected journal.
What's it called?
Lancet. Lancet. Okay, and it's And they wrote an article, they studied this stuff, and they said it only works as placebo effect. And the homeopathists are very upset. They don't agree with that. They have their own tiny spec, and it's not for us to figure that out. Okay? It's not important to us whether it's who's right in that decision. But even if it works for a placebo effect, if our criteria is just that there should be some kind of a track record, some kind of a basis for thinking that it works, so then it should be that criteria. It's not Bitul. We're not saying it doesn't have to be the highest standards of double-blind testing, if there's some basis, for thinking that the thing is going to work, then it should be meeting that criteria, even though it's not meeting the criteria of a modern scientist, a doctor who is the white coat. We need a guy who is a different kind of coat, and if he's happy with it, that should be good. So it'll come out, according to that all kinds of branches of alternative medicine, homeopathy is just one of them, but all kinds of branches may qualify as refuah yeduah, and really a refuah yeduah is only telling you not to use just what an old wives' tale. Someone has no shaykhus b'chlal. Someone just walk up to them and says, you know what, how about if we give him a hot bath, that'll cure his thing. You know what I mean? What kind of hot bath is going to cure his thing? Just totally made up. So that would be, but otherwise we'd have lots of latitude to use these refuah.
So, but let's say a mother calls up wants to give it to a child.
So it's a good question. So that's one of the pioneers that the homeopaths had. They said, because we use it on pets also. We use it on pets, and it works. They said the pets don't have a placebo. They don't know. We just stuff it into their mouth. They don't know what they're eating, and they got to make it better anyhow. It's a good time. But my point is, I'm not trying to decide the right or wrong. The point is that
I'm sorry, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that for a child.
Maybe the kid
wants to give child.
Maybe the kid also has a placebo effect. You may give it to a sleeping child.
You get the one.
Right. I'm asking. Okay, so, yes. My point is,
unless somebody's taking it to make somebody else happy, why did you drain the cup? How's the drain the cup? Mother's draining the cup, take this thing and say, I don't believe it. Tell me it's mutter or not. So
my point is, you're sort of getting into whether they're right, who's right or wrong about it. It could be that for you do it, it's enough that even there is all basis for thinking that it's okay. My point is, it doesn't have to be.
No, it can't be. I don't know. Let's say this is like a mumcha saying to heaven. You know what I'm saying? If there's not one molecule, there's 30 seeds, not one molecule of thing in there.
So again, my work. That's what you say. No, I'm on your side. I don't think it. But what I'm saying is that the fact that there is a group of people who believe that works, it's yeduah. I mean, to them, they have some kind of a track record. So that's sort of why and how it works. But no, it's not just to qualify for that. What I'm trying to say is that refuah yeduah is really a very low criteria. There's not a very high bar to be qualified as refuah yeduah.
It's a different area because here's the mumcha saying the body can't work.
Okay, that's a child. That's a child effect. When they're mukhas disagree with each other, I'm not sure that would make a difference by yourself. There are shaylas that don't Kippur. Okay, took stay back. When one person said yes, one person doesn't know. I don't know enough about that. Okay, there's a.
You know it.
Okay, anyhow, so just to get it, if I could summarize, I've been talking for a long time. Just to summarize for a minute is, some of these things are made from animals, minerals, and plants. At the beginning, we spoke about what seems like the most obvious question, which is the animal products that are in there. When they're made from actual animal products, that seems like the most obvious question. Some of those actually turned out to not be shaylas at all. Even with that were shaylas, in every case, it seemed that they would be bitul. Okay, so the active ingredients seem to be the less serious shayla. But the inactive ingredients was more serious because they tend to come in alcohol and lactose, both of which are shaylas. So we had started to think that there might not be a shayla, that those things you might be allowed for a chayla to eat them, but then we have to then think about whether this style of healing people qualifies as a chayla, as something that for which you could be makel. So first of all, Rabbi Yasman said, I hadn't thought of that, was that they have to really be sick enough to qualify for kulas of chayla. But even if they did, then we talked about whether those kind of kulas are right to apply to this thing, but this qualifies as a refuah yeduah.
So Rabbi